You may not notice, but something extraordinary is happening to you right now. While your routine follows, silently, your conscience is expanding, leading you to see the world in a way that few can. This is not mysticism or exaggeration. The synchronicities you have already noticed, the moments when intuition has gotten right, or that sense of unexplained peace, all of which are clear signs that you are already playing the fifth dimension. And the most curious? Many go through this without even understanding what is happening. But this transition is not just about seeing repeated numbers or feeling intense vibrations. It changes the way you perceive time, transform your relationships, and reveal the real purpose of your existence. Yes, the world around you still seems the same, but within you something is already different. Your wishes are changing, your priorities are adjusting, and perhaps some old situations are surfaced to be resolved for good. Does it seem coincidence? It is not. This process is there to lead you to a high level of consciousness, where what seemed confusing once now makes sense. If you feel something is happening, but you don't know exactly what, this content is for you. Discover the signs of the fifth dimension that are already present in your life and understand how to recognize each of them. Prepare yourself, because after that, you will never see the world the same way. Many people still imagine the fifth dimension as a distant place, almost mystical, when, in fact, it is not a physical space, but a state of expanded consciousness. It is like changing glasses blurred with crystal clear lenses that reveal a new spectrum of reality. At this level, perception is no longer linear and becomes multidimensional, where past, present, and future coexist. Have you noticed how sometimes you have the feeling that you've lived a moment before it even happened? This is because, in this quantum reality, time behaves fluidly, allowing you to access information that seems to arise out of nowhere, but in fact, have always been there. When someone enters this state, the expansion of consciousness becomes inevitable. Small details, which once went unnoticed, begin to make sense. Increased intuition manifests itself naturally, as if an inner compass began to guide decisions. Suddenly, situations that once seemed merely coincidences become clear synchronicities, confirming that everything is connected. Who never thought of a person and, minutes later, received a message from him? These are subtle signs that perception is tuning with a new reality. This awakening does not happen suddenly, but as a process of deep self-knowledge, where the person begins to question old beliefs and see the world from a new perspective. The connection with nature intensifies, mental noises decrease, and a sense of inner peace arises that does not depend on external circumstances. However, this is just the beginning of the journey. As this perception expands, a change in the worldview becomes inevitable. As consciousness expands, the way of seeing the world changes completely. What once seemed solid and unchanging, now proves to be malleable, shaped by his own perception. Quantum reality shows that everything is energy and vibration, and this dramatically changes the way people interact with life. Suddenly, conflicts that once seemed personal are understood from a larger perspective, such as pieces of a cosmic puzzle. There is a likeness to simply observe, without reacting automatically. It's like getting out of the game and starting to see it out, understanding its rules. This new mental clarity brings with it a deep sense of universal connection. Intuition becomes a reliable compass, guiding choices and revealing paths that once seemed invisible. Have you ever had that feeling of simply knowing something, without any logical explanation? This is because high consciousness states allow to capture information beyond the rational mind. People who go through this transition often report an increase in emotional sensitivity, realizing the feelings of others more depth and the vibrations around them. In addition, a change in the perception of time arises. The hours seem to expand or contract depending on the internal state. Moments of absolute presence become more common, and attachment to the past and the future loses strength. When you live in this flow, decisions are made with more confidence, and life gains a fluidity that once seemed impossible. And it is precisely in this state that the first clear signs of the transition to the fifth dimension begins to emerge. The transition to the fifth dimension does not happen at once, but leaves subtle tracks along the way. One of the first signs is the occurrence of moments of spontaneous clarity, where old worries seem irrelevant and a new understanding arises out of nowhere. Suddenly, answers appear effortlessly, as if reality itself begins to whisper solutions. Situations that once seemed insoluble problems are seen from a new perspective, and the person feels an inner peace that does not depend on the external circumstances. It is as if the mind is in tune with a higher frequency, where everything makes sense. Another strong sign of this change is the constant presence of synchronicities. Have you ever looked at the clock over and over and saw 11:11, 22:22, or similar numerical standards? Have you found a person at the exact moment when you needed that conversation? These coincidences are not mere casualities, but indications that reality is responding to the new vibration of consciousness. Increased intuition also becomes a reliable guide, allowing decisions to be made without fear or doubt. This new perception is reflected in relationships, work, and even the way the person interacts with nature. In addition, there is an enlarged emotional sensitivity. Repressed emotions come to light to be healed, and there is a greater need for authenticity. People, habits, and environments that are not aligned with this new frequency begin to look heavy or uncomfortable. It is common to feel a boost of seeking quieter spaces, connecting with nature, and cultivating a deeper spiritual purpose. All of this is just the beginning, because as this transition advances, the very notion of time begins to change. The idea that time is a straight line, going from the past to the future, begins to dispose as consciousness expands. In the fifth dimension, the perception of time becomes fluid, almost like a river that can be sailed in different directions. Have you ever been thinking of someone and, minutes later, does that person send you a message? Or feel that an important event had happened before, like a déjà vu? This is because quantum reality allows you to access different points of time simultaneously, challenging traditional logic. With this new perception, an interesting phenomenon arises: the instant manifestation. As time responds to the internal state of the person, what one thinks and feels begins to materialize much faster. If someone is aligned with positive emotions and mental clarity, opportunities and significant encounters arise as if magic. On the other hand, if the mind is focused on fear or scarcity, these experiences also manifest themselves. Therefore, learning to maintain an energy balance becomes essential to navigating this new reality. This change also affects the way we deal with the past and the future. Ancient problems can be re-signified in seconds, and anxiety about what is to come loses strength. Instead of worrying about tomorrow, the person learns to trust the flow of the present moment, where answers come naturally. This generates a sense of inner peace and a freedom that few experience. And when this perception expands, it is like climbing a mountain. The higher it rises, the clearer the vision of existence becomes. The journey to the fifth dimension can be compared to climbing a mountain. At first, the climb seems challenging, full of obstacles and moments of uncertainty. It is easy to want to give up and go back to the family ground, where everything seems most predictable. But as it goes, the landscape begins to change. Past concerns become small below, and a new perspective of life is revealed. What once seemed like a gigantic problem now is just an insignificant detail in the vastness of existence. The higher it goes up, the greater the expanded view of reality. The connection with the whole intensifies, and it is clear that each experience had an essential purpose for growth. If before the mind was set in small difficulties, now she understands that everything is interconnected and that each challenge was actually an invitation to evolve. Just as a climber needs to rely on their instincts and the solidity of each step, those who are awakening to high consciousness needs to learn to trust their own intuition and natural flow of life. At the top of the mountain, the air is lighter, the landscape is breathtaking and silence brings an indescribable inner peace. But getting there doesn't mean that the journey is over, the other way around, it's where a new level of understanding begins. With this clarity comes deep emotional sensitivity and a new way of understanding the people around. Suddenly, it is easier to feel what others are going through, read between emotions and realize beyond words. With high consciousness, emotional sensitivity intensifies. Own and alien emotions are felt more depth, almost as if they were vibrational waves crossing the body. It is common to realize what someone is feeling even before the person expresses any word. This level of perception may seem like a burden at first, as the pain and insecurities of others become more evident. However, over time, this intuitive understanding becomes a gift, allowing more authentic and compassionate interactions. Also, old emotional wounds begin to lose their weight before. Situations that once caused intense triggers are now observed with more distance and understanding. This is because the person is no longer attached to reactive patterns, but in a state of deep self-awareness, where he can identify the origin of feelings without being dominated by them. Instead of avoiding or repressing emotions, she learns to accept them and dissolve them more easily, promoting a true process of emotional healing. This refinement of perception also strengthens increased intuition. Responses to internal dilemmas appear spontaneously, as if the universe were constantly sending subtle signals. Small coincidences turn into synchronicities impossible to ignore, guiding decisions, and showing that everything is connected. And it is precisely this connection with the flow of existence that paves the way to recognize the signs of the universe. When someone begins to vibrate at the frequency of the fifth dimension, synchronicities become impossible to ignore. It is as if the universe is leaving clues along the way, guiding the person toward his spiritual purpose. Have you ever been through situations where everything seemed to fit perfectly? How to think of someone and, a few minutes later, that person calls you. Or bump into a book exactly with the answers I needed. These chances are not mere coincidences, but confirmations that reality is responding to its internal state. These signs serve as a cosmic GPS, showing that the person is aligned with the universal connection. The more attention is given to them, the more frequent and clear they become. Repeated numbers, phrases that repeatedly appear in different places, unexpected meetings, all of this is part of the subtle communication of the universe. However, recognizing these signs is not enough, it is necessary to act. When intuition points a way and synchronization reinforces it, ignoring them is to waste precious opportunities for growth and transformation. With this new perception, attachment to certainties decreases and confidence in the fluidity of life increases. One understands that everything has a purpose and that even challenges are only part of the journey. This generates a profound change in the way of seeing the world, reducing the need for control and making room for greater delivery. And as consciousness expands, the desire for material goods begins to lose strength. Something curious happens when consciousness expands, the obsession with material goods begins to lose meaning. Not that money or objects are no longer important, but the relationship with them changes completely. Instead of seeking happiness in possessions, one realizes that true satisfaction comes from within. Have you noticed how some people have everything and still feel empty, while others, with less, live in deep inner peace? This is the effect of material detachment, understanding that external things are tools, not genuine sources of realization. This does not mean abandoning the material world, but using it more with more awareness. Instead of accumulating for fear of scarcity, the person begins to share more, trust the flow of life and invest in experiences that feed the soul. The feeling of scarcity gives way to the certainty that there will always be enough. Those who awaken to this new reality realize that the true value is not in what one has, but in the freedom of not being controlled by possessions. When the accumulation is no longer a priority, space arises for a level of creativity that once seemed inaccessible. This inner freedom paves the way for a creative explosion. Without the weight of attachment, the mind becomes a fertile field for innovative ideas, inspiring projects, and new forms of expression. Intuition guides each step and the person feels driven to manifest his essence in the world. And it is in this vibration of authenticity and inspiration that something magical happens. A constant flow of new ideas, art, and innovation takes over life. When the mind is free from the limitations imposed by fear and attachment, creativity flows like a caudal river. It is as if a behaving has been opened, allowing new ideas, projects and forms of expression to arise effortlessly. The connection with the fifth dimension arouses an artistic and innovative potential that was once asleep. It doesn't matter if the person paints, writes, dances or inventing solutions, high inspiration manifests itself in countless ways. Even in everyday tasks, a new, more intuitive and spontaneous approach emerges. This creative explosion does not come out of nowhere, it is the result of universal connection. When it is aligned with this high frequency, the mind captures ideas and insights as an antenna tuned to a top season. Great geniuses in history, such as Nikola Tesla and Leonardo da Vinci, talked about moments of enlightenment where inspiration simply took them. And this same creative energy is available to everyone who learns to trust the flow and express their authenticity without fear. With this new perception, authentic personal expression becomes a fundamental pillar of existence. The need to please or follow external standards loses strength, and the desire to manifest the true essence becomes irresistible. Those who experience this state feel indescribable joy in creating, whether composing a song, writing a book or simply bringing more beauty to the world. But for this creativity to expand even more, it is essential to clean emotional blocks and leave behind old pain. The journey to the fifth dimension inevitably brings out wounds of the past. Not as a punishment, but as an opportunity for liberation. Repressed emotions, old trauma and limiting beliefs emerge to be healed and dissolved. Have you noticed how sometimes certain situations seem to be repeated in your life, as an endless cycle? This is because the universe presents the same lessons until they are learned. But when you see these pains from a new perspective, they are no longer bound and become growth portals. The process of emotional healing is not linear, it is not always comfortable, but it is deeply liberating. Some memories may resurface intensely, arousing sensations that seemed forgotten. However, now perception has changed. Instead of fleeing pain, one learns to welcome it, understanding that each wound brings with it a valuable teaching. The key is in deep self-awareness. The more you investigate your own story, the easier it becomes to re-signify it and move on with lightness. With the wounds healed, the previously trapped energy in the past release, allowing a genuine inner state of peace. The mind becomes quieter, emotional triggers lose strength, and a new sense of freedom takes over life. It's like releasing a weight that was carried without realizing it. This lightness creates space for something even deeper, a state of balance and harmony, where the present becomes a refuge of tranquility and clarity. True inner peace does not depend on external circumstances. When consciousness rises, the need for control decreases, and the person learns to flow with life instead of fighting it. The ups and downs of existence continue to happen, but they are no longer storms that drag everything with you. It is as if, in the midst of chaos, there was an internal space of total tranquility, a refuge where nothing can shake the true essence. This state is not achieved through escape or denial, but by deep acceptance of the present moment. With this change, concerns and fears lose strength. What previously seemed urgent now is seen from another perspective: what really matters. What battles are worth it? This understanding brings immense relief, because the mind is no longer hostage to unnecessary anxieties. The change in the perception of time contributes to this, as the person stops living in the past or in the future and is anchored in the now. Meditation, Contact with nature and breathing practices are powerful tools to strengthen this connection and maintain this state of balance. This new level of consciousness also transforms the way the person relates to the world. Conflicts lose importance, the need to prove something disappears, and life becomes simpler and more fluid. The connection with nature intensifies, because the silence and harmony of the external environment reflect what happens inside. And the more aligned with this internal peace you are, the more your relationships begin to transform. Now that you understand the signals of the fifth dimension, the big question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you ignore synchronicities and keep living on autopilot, or will you embrace this new perception and allow your consciousness to expand even more? The choice is yours, but one thing is certain: since you awaken to this reality, there is no return. The world will never be seen the same way, and you will realize that it has a much greater power over your life than you thought. So start paying more attention to signs. Observe time flowing differently, realize how your intuition is sharper, and note how certain situations seem to manifest exactly when you need it. This is no chance, it is reality responding to your vibration. What can you do today to deepen this connection? Perhaps devoting a time to silence, reconnecting with nature, or simply relying more on the flow of life. Small changes can open gigantic doors. If this content made sense to you, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications to continue this journey of expansion of consciousness. Let us unravel the mysteries of reality together and take a step further in our evolution. After all, the universe is always talking to you. The question is, are you listening?